Hello and welcome to our continuing series of Lent readings for 2023, considering people who encountered Jesus. Today it's day 15 and we're going to look at a lame man who was brought to Jesus by his friends. Yesterday, we looked at some pig herders who were so fearful of what Jesus might do among them that they sent him away. Today, the story starts with the opposite, as some people actively seek Jesus out and make a great effort on behalf of one of their friends, and he ends up getting far more than they expected. Let's read together from Matthew chapter 9. Some men brought to Jesus a paralyzed man lying on a mat. When he saw their faith, he said to the man, "Take heart, son, your sins are forgiven." At this, some of the teachers of the law said to themselves, "This fellow's blaspheming." Knowing their thoughts, Jesus said, "Why do you entertain evil thoughts in your hearts? Which is easier to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Get up and walk'? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." So he said to the paralyzed man, "Get up, take up your mat, and go home." Then the man got up and went home. Some people hear the news about Jesus. He is healing people, and they decide to carry their paralyzed friend to see him. We have no background as to why the man cannot walk or how long he had been in this situation. But his friends give the impression that this is his only hope. The effort they make is taken further in Mark and Luke's accounts, as the crowd surrounding the place where Jesus was meeting was so large that they end up climbing up onto the roof, making a hole in the roof, and lower their friend down right in front of Jesus. In verse 2, you might notice it says, "When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the man, 'Your sins are forgiven.'" It says their faith, not his faith. This was not the faith of the paralyzed man, but that of his friends. Jesus recognized that the bold action of his friends was a demonstration of their faith in him. And in turn, he offers forgiveness for the man's sins. At this point, there's some sneering in the crowd. The religious leaders saw this as blasphemy. They knew that only God could ultimately declare someone free from sin. But what they didn't know was who it was who stood before them. Jesus knew their thoughts, so he challenged their thinking by asking, which is easier, to forgive sins or to bring physical healing? The answer that they are struggling to articulate is that for man both are impossible, but with God both are possible. Maybe they decline to answer because they anticipate what Jesus is going to do next based on his reputation. Jesus proves his authority to forgive sins by telling the paralyzed man to pick up his mat and go home. He is immediately healed and walks out before everyone, which leaves the religious leaders with a bit of an issue. At the halfway point in this story, when Jesus says, "Your sins are forgiven," I'm sure it was the last thing the friends expected Jesus to say. They'd brought him there for healing, not forgiveness. The man himself was probably thinking, "Thanks, but how is that going to help me?" Jesus does go on to heal him, but by forgiving sins before healing, Jesus is setting out his priorities. There is something worse than being paralyzed, worse than any sickness, even worse than death itself. It's living a life unforgiven. It's spending eternity without God, dying without being made right with him. His friends had brought him to Jesus because they had faith that Jesus could heal him of his paralysis. but what he received was greater than they hoped for. He was not only physically healed, but spiritually healed as well. We all have friends and relatives who need to be brought to Jesus. So let me encourage you, don't give up. Keep going. As we continue to bring our friends and relatives to Jesus in faith, through word, through action, through invitation, and through prayer. The promise of Ephesians 3:20 reminds us that he can do more than we ask or imagine. Until next time, have a blessed